Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Education and Early Childhood Learning. Questioning for this department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The member for Lac Du Bonny.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. So to sort of carry on from yesterday a little bit, I know near the end of our time yesterday, we wanted to talk about the funding to school divisions. I believe the second last year of my tender, we had hit an astronomical amount, is basically what I said yesterday, and to the news when we did announce the amount of funding to our school divisions within our great province of ours, and there was a couple things that I wanted to make sure that we put on the record, and it was in regards to I believe the minister yesterday, and I looked through Hansard just to sort of verify that the minister was making a comment on how we were the ones who were blaming school divisions for reductions in school funding, or no, we were blaming school divisions for the reductions in funding, and actually we weren't. And just yesterday, there was even more evidence on the evening news and in the media talking about how the Premier himself and the Finance Minister were actually blaming school divisions for the double-digit, some of the double-digit hikes, and we had that conversation yesterday about not all school divisions were hitting that double digits hike, but some definitely were. And I guess where I was trying to get to was if the education minister sees for the upcoming school year some form of regular double-digit hikes, because we were talking about not just accountability from being in government, but also the fact that we're looking at predictability, predictable funding to school divisions. And so I was wondering if the last couple years of underfunding education, which is now we're seeing the reduction in the major reduction in the education offset grant to school divisions, but at the same time trying to keep those taxes low to Manitobans, we're seeing school divisions now hiking taxes up considerably. And the only reason that school divisions are hiking taxes up considerably is that this year's funding cuts to those school divisions. So I'm asking the minister if she is going to be talking with school divisions, working with school divisions about whether they're going to be limiting the amount of the double-digit tax hikes, or is she okay with the fact that under her leadership there's cuts to education funding and then forcing school divisions to raise taxes by, in some cases, in double-digit numbers.
The Honourable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. And again, just there's a few things I would like to set the record straight based on some of what the member opposite put in his question. There is blame to be leveled when we're talking about the property tax increases for those Manitobans who are seeing them. And by the way, we know that 80% of Manitobans will and are better off under the NDP's homeowner affordability tax credit. It was designed to help those Manitobans who are most in need of tax relief, and that's exactly what it's doing. But where there is blame to be leveled when it comes to school divisions and their need to address their budgetary needs, the blame is on the previous government for the chronic underfunding of education that they did during nearly their whole time in office. Again, as I mentioned yesterday, up and until the election year, when all of a sudden the PCs decided, all of a sudden they valued the funding of education. After year and year and year of cuts. Again, I read this into the record yesterday, but for clarity, we'll read it again. In 2018, a 1.1% increase. In 2018-19, a 0.7% increase. In 2019-2020, a 0.5% increase. In 2020-2021, a 0.5% increase. And again, these were at times when school divisions were facing the greatest challenge they may have ever faced, at least in this century, which was the COVID-19 pandemic. At a time they needed supports more than ever, they got a 0.5 from this previous government. The member in his question stated that our government has cut education funding. It is simply inaccurate. In our first 2 years alone in government, we have increased funding to school divisions by a total of $170 million. Those are increases, those are facts. They're printed in our budget estimates. Manitobans can look them up. Manitobans know who they can trust when it comes to delivering education in our province. Manitobans know who they can trust when it comes to funding education in our province. The record is clear. So there were no funding cuts, either this year or last year. We are increasing the budgets that go to school divisions every single year since we've been in government. There's also been no reduction to the offset grant, as was put on the record by the member during his question. There's been absolutely no reduction to the offset grant. As we stated on the record yesterday for the committee, the offset grant was in fact rolled into base, which means that is continued to be provided to school divisions. There is one thing that I agree with that the member said, and that's about the member alluded to or asked or posed whether or not we would continue working with school divisions and boards, and I can say resoundingly, absolutely. That is something that Manitobans were asking for in the 2023 election, was a government that knows how to work with other people, knows how to work with other orders of government, knows how to work with the federal government, knows how to work with the cities, the municipalities, knows how to work with the elected school boards. The previous government's track record was clear. Manitobans know it. The education sector knows it. They had no friends in the PC government. Our government, we are a listening government, we're a collaborative government, and we're here to work for Manitobans and to serve Manitobans. So we will continue to do so. Just last week, I met with the Manitoba Association of School Superintendents. We met on Friday. We met again last Monday. We met with MASS alongside all of the other ed partners, MASBO, the MSBA, the MTS. I have an open door, and I'm happy to continue working with the Manitoba School Boards Association, again, who I've had many, many, many discussions with. in the lead up to our funding announcement, during our funding announcement, and post our funding announcement. The sector knows they have a great partner in the NDP.
Thank you. Any further questions? The member for Lac Du Bonny.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. And so I guess a roundabout way, it would have been nice if the minister would have landed the plane on the actual question, which was, is she going to be speaking with the Manitoba School Boards Association about asking them if they're going to be locking in their double-digit tax increases on Manitobans? Are the conversations happening where they're asking for increased funding? Because where I left off yesterday, part of where I left off yesterday was talking about the historical percentages of where the funding was coming from to fund education in this great province of ours. And initially, and you know, I look around the room and I see some of the members sitting around the table that you know, have some history on the agriculture side. Initially in the late 50s, the percentages of well, maybe just a couple of members sitting around the table that actually remember that. But that being said, in the late 50s, we had the split of about 80-20, where 80% of the funding for education was coming from government and 20% was coming from the property owners. And we had seen over the 17 years of debt decay and decline under the previous NDP government, the dark days of the Selinger government, we saw you know, record-breaking shift in those ratios. We're looking at, you know, roughly, I think as low as maybe 53% coming from government, and then the other 47 roughly coming from local taxation. And in 2019, the PC government decided that they were going to try to alleviate some of that tax burden off of the property and homeowners, and start to eliminate the education tax off of property in 10 years. Well, fast tracked, I believe we got to about 50, we got to 50% of the education tax coming off of property tax rather quickly. And so homeowners, property owners saw the benefit to that, and with that, I believe for the 23-24 school year, we surpassed that 1957 ratio of 80-20. I think we were closer to, you know, I'm sure that the minister could ask her department officials specifically, but I believe that we were north of 84-16 roughly on that percentage of coming from government and then local taxation. And now I think in you know, 2 budgetary cycles under the current NDP government, under this education minister, her working with the finance minister and the premier himself, I think we've gone back to that slippery slope of you know, maybe a 60-40, maybe even a more of an even split than that, now that they're putting the burden back on taxpayers, and now, as we heard yesterday, blaming school boards for those increases. So I guess what I'd like to ask the minister now is that in the 25-26 budget year, how much, as a breakdown, did a school division, I'm just going to pick one, River East Transcona receive in the 25-26 school year? And that's a breakdown between the nutrition funding and the operating support funding.
The Honourable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Yeah, as a general statement, I don't blame school divisions for the situation that they're in. I blame poor leadership and a lack of ability to prioritize and fund education by the previous government, just so we're clear. And I'll keep repeating it for the member. He likes to categorize this as blame. The Premier and the the Finance Minister and myself as Minister of Education have been crystal clear. We're not assigning blame to school divisions. We blame the previous government. We're just simply correcting the record from the continuous misinformation that the member opposite and the leader of the opposition and many people continue to get up day in and day out and put misinformation on the record about what is driving property tax increases. So we feel that the public deserves to know the truth and they deserve transparency and clarity, so we're just trying to clarify the record. The member's question is about ratios. So I'm happy to talk about ratios. However, I think it's important to know that regardless of the ratio, 80-20, 60-40, when the amount of funding is cut, it's still a cut. When the amount is woefully inadequate, it's woefully inadequate. So the member can talk about ratios, but the fact of the matter is, year after year after year, they cut funding to education. I read the numbers into the record. 0.5s, 0.5, 2 years in a row of 0.5s. Adjusted against inflation, that's a cut. So that's their record. When we talk about their record of funding ratios, it's a fact that in 2016, when the NDP left office, the province at that time was paying about 62.5%. And by 2020, 2021, under the leadership of the previous PC government, that fell to 56.4%. So that's the truth in the matter. Another fact I'd love to put on the record, which we're pulling from the Frame report itself, that currently, based on the funding that we have provided to school divisions in this year, and this is taking into account the operating grants to school divisions, capital, TRAF contributions, and the government's contribution via the homeowner's tax credit, we're closer actually to 80%. 76.8 is the actual specific number. And again, it's in the Frame report. This is something that the member can access and can verify. So I think we're doing a pretty good job. But again, we have a lot of catch-up to do. This is what happens when you chronically underfund the education system. School divisions are in a really tough situation. Here's another fact that I would like to put on the record. The member asked about River East Transcona School Division. And to answer his question substantively, River East Transcona School Division it's about 70% provincial funding, 30% municipal funding. So it's about 70-30 split, based on the rough math that I'm doing here at the table, that River East Transcona is funding their school division. But it's a fact that in River East Transcona School Division, during the 6-year period in which, 6-7 year period in which the PCs were in power, River East Transcona during that time, over a 5-year period, underneath the leadership of the Progressive Conservatives, over 5 years, the River East Transcona School Division was able to add 30 teachers. That's not enough. That's simply not enough. We're talking 6 teachers a year. In 2024, after finally receiving some sustainable, predictable, equitable funding from the province of Manitoba, in 2024, in 1 year alone, River East Transcona School Division hired 88 teachers and 74 other educators. It's nearly 150 positions in a year when they added only 30 positions under over years under the previous government. So this is how our government is supporting school divisions.
Thank you. The member for, the member for Lactabani.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. So just, taking a look at a couple things here. So just yesterday, the education minister just put on the record that neither her nor the finance minister nor the premier blamed school divisions, yet there were questions in regards to the increased property taxes basically on not only Winnipeggers, but soon Manitobans are all going to be receiving these their tax bills in the mail, and I think as many of my colleagues had mentioned yesterday, there is going to be that sticker shock, I think, to the point where, matter of fact, the education minister put it on the record today that earlier in one of her initial answers that 80% of Manitobans were going to be receiving the relief. But all along, the premier's been patting himself on the back saying that 100% of Manitobans were going to be receiving that relief. But then, now the education minister says 80%. I believe the finance minister said 98%. So I know that, witnessing what had happened with the member from Fort Garry in their caucus, I know that they do have the odd disagreement. So I would think that on something to the tune of the property tax increases and the credits that are going back to Manitobans, I would hope that the new Democratic, the NDP party would actually get together and have consistent messaging. But just to put on the record, the premier did say yesterday that to the tune of if the members are upset with the property tax increases, that, and I quote the premier saying, "We don't set the property taxes, the school divisions do. So again, if he wants to run for school trustee, go ahead and do so," end quote from the premier. He also said that it's the school trustees who set the taxation rates. You have the opportunity to go to the ballot box next year if you're unhappy with what's happening this year, end quote. So to me, it's seeming like the premier is taking a page out of the Selinger government, and which is his mentor, and trying to put the blame on the school boards and not taking accountability for the funding cuts that we've seen. So I guess the question that I had for the minister was specifically, and we'll talk about River East Transcona. So I'm looking at their overall budget this year, looking from from the minister's announcement of $135.4 million. So what I'd like to know is, in that increase, can you break that down between operating and the nutrition funding, and also the nutrition funding from the federal increase? I know the percentages are there, but I want to hear the dollar amounts. Thank you.
The minister would just like to ask a question for clarification. The Minister of Education, sorry.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and thank you, member, for allowing my clarification. You're asking for that breakdown for River East Transcona School Division specific? Okay, thank you.
I just picked.
Okay, yep. Oh.
Member from Lactabani.
Yeah, so just for clarification, I just picked one River East Transcona School Division off your backgrounder on the news release.
And just a quick reminder to put questions and answers through the chair, please. The Honorable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. And I want to start off by saying that Manitobans are smart. And Manitoban's government that they have today respects them. And we respect clarity and transparency and clear factual information. So the member in his question, at the beginning of his question, talked about or questioned some of the numbers that we've put forward as a team. And I would love to set the record straight. It is the case that unfortunately the member has not been paying close enough attention. So the Premier absolutely did say 100% of Manitobans are better off with an NDP government. And that is a true and factual statement. And the member can check Hansard. That is exactly what the Premier said. The Premier did not say 100% of Manitobans. It was not in reference to any sort of tax credit. The comment was general and it was factual. 100% of Manitobans are better off today than they were under the previous administration. We are getting to work on healthcare, fixing the cuts and the chaos that was caused to our precious healthcare system under the leadership of Brian Pallister and Heather Stephenson. We are finally funding education. We have a strategy to end chronic homelessness in our province, which was something that the previous government completely neglected to even accept as a reality. So we have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of catch up to make. But again, to clarify, the Premier said, and he spoke the truth, 100% of Manitobans are better off under an NDP government. Our Minister of Finance yesterday put on the record that 95% of homeowners in the municipality of Carman will be better off under the homeowner affordability tax credit, better than they would have been under the previous PC government's plan to phase out education property taxes, eliminate elected school boards, and defund our education system wholly, which is what their plan was. Thank goodness Manitobans knew that they could trust the NDP on healthcare, on education, and they elected us on October the 3rd of 2023. So there's no blame here when it comes to school divisions. As I've said a few times now, there is blame to be had for the underfunding of education in the province of Manitoba, and that blame rests on the shoulders of the member opposite and the team for which he was a part of. And they would like to come in here today, as they've done many times, and mislead Manitobans, confuse Manitobans about the numbers, about the facts, put misinformation on the record. We saw this very recently. We saw it with the wildfires. Shamefully, the leader of the opposition got up in the House and tried to confuse Manitobans about whether or not there was a fire ban, whether there was a fire ban or not a fire ban. during a time of emergency in our province, where Manitobans were worried about their safety, were worried about their families, were worried about their property, the members opposite stood up in the chamber and wanted to confuse Manitobans. That's irresponsible leadership. We've also seen them break the law. We just found out today there was a conflict of interest report.
Relevance, please.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry, Minister.
Thank you for your guidance, Honorable Chairperson. I think that Manitobans know who they can trust when it comes to education and who they can trust when it comes to keeping their families safe and who they can trust when it comes to taking care of their children. To answer the member's question about River East Transcona School Division and some of the breakdown of their fundings, River East Transcona receives $1.6 million from provincial nutrition funding, $303,000 from federal nutrition funding. They also have 3 community schools, which are funded to the tune of $80,000 each. And they have 2 BSIP schools funded to the tune of $20,000 each. I'd be happy to provide further clarity on the funding of River East Transcona School Division and if the member has any further questions.
The member for Lac Du Bonnet.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you for also trying to get us back into some relevance on the fact that we're talking about education estimates, education and early childhood learning estimates, to be specific. And I'm glad that after speaking for roughly 4 minutes and 30 seconds off topic, the education minister got closer to the original 2 questions that I've asked, and we're finally getting closer to the answer. So what I'm seeing here then, this upcoming school year for 25-26, so just looking at some math, looking at the 24-25 school year for River East Transcona, and I'm just picking them as an example and trying to get my head wrapped around the fact on this funding, adequately funding that the minister's trying to sell to Manitobans. So with her math, we're looking at a $3.3 million increase from last year. And when you take into account the food and nutrition from Manitoba and from the federal government nearing $2 million, we're looking at about a $1.4 million increase in education funding to River East Transcona. And so it's no wonder that River East Transcona has recently put out a newsletter to the public, the constituents in River East Transcona, talking about the shortfall that they've received this year as opposed to last year. So I will give the opportunity for the minister to talk about the dollars and cents again, breaking it down. She was almost getting there in her last answer, so I'm not going to take up my entire 5 minutes and getting off topic, because I know Manitobans have sent me here to be the advocate for education and early childhood learning. And that's what I'm going to do, ask questions on behalf of Manitobans. So if she can continue breaking down that funding increase specifically for River East Transcona, because she had said 1.6 million from the provincial increase with nutrition funding and a 303,000 increase as part of the federal nutrition funding. So if she can continue to elaborate on that roughly $3.3 million increase to Transcona River East Transcona School Division. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
The Honorable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. So yeah, happy to provide more information to the committee and read some numbers into the record. So the total support going to River East Transcona for the 25-26 school year is $135,402,370. That's the total funding envelope. That represents an increase of $3,946,728. When you calculate that by a percentage, that's a 3% increase that the River East Transcona School Division saw this year. Last year, the River East Transcona School Division saw about a 6.5?
6.7.
6.7% increase. So over the 2 years that we've been in government, River East Transcona has seen a roughly 10% increase in their budget, in their funding, I should say. Again, of that, they will receive, are these increases? It's 189 million.
Yeah, 189
Yeah.
billion, yeah.
So to break that down further, for the 25-26 school year, River East Transcona School Division will receive $189,170,700 in provincial funding, $79,464,000 in municipal funding, and $1,565,000 from other sources. River East Transcona School Division is collecting $120,289,000 in special levy for 2025. $216 million will be allocated to salary expenses, which is roughly 55% of the division's revenues. I think it's important to note that, again, I read during my last answer, I spoke a bit about the nutrition funding increases. I think it's important to note that all nutrition funding increases are a 100% lift over what the PC government had provided in nutrition funding directly to schools, which was zero. So all of that nutrition funding, $30 million a year, is an increase and something that schools value and are benefiting from every single day. And we're hearing this anecdotally. I can't wait for the data to start coming in, the data that will show what we already know to be true, which is that Nello's Universal Nutrition Program is changing lives across Manitoba. I'll read just one quote that we got from the superintendent at Frontier School Division. Having food available at school is a game changer for these students. Some show better attendance, but all of them demonstrate better in-class engagement and achievement in their work, as well as better behavior. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about valuing education and funding education and meeting the needs of Manitoba children. This is what we're talking about, and this is evidence that we're doing it. I'm so proud of the Universal Nutrition Program that was started under the leadership of Minister Nello Altomare. Again, a $30 million new historic investment in our kids and in the future of our province. Much accomplished, much more to do and much to lose if we were to go back to the PC way of funding education.
The minister's time is up. Can you tell me if, can you let us know if this is from a public document, the quotes, the numbers?
Oh,
The quote from the superintendent, sorry. Yeah, Honorable.
no, I apologize, it's not from a public document, but I can have that tabled for the committee before we rise at 5 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Member for Lactabani?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. And once again, Manitobans, the hundreds of you that are watching the estimates process, specifically in room 254 today, you're seeing the minister start to, unfortunately, get off track a little bit and start to want to pick fights here. I've been brought here to advocate for education and early childhood learning and ask questions about this year's budget, and much like what the education minister has just done, quoted from something, and we're going to see what that specific quote came from in the near future, I guess. Sometime between right now and the future, we will get that quote and what she was reading off of. So to correct the record, the previous PC government absolutely contributed to schools through the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. And matter of fact, since the original Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba was created, and I will give credit, unlike the education minister who can't get out of the partisan sphere, originally that Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba was created under an NDP government. And then for roughly 11, 12 years, the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba did not see an increase. And so I had the pleasure of attending an announcement that more than doubled the funds to the Child Nutrition Council of Manitoba. And so we all agree on all sides of the House, unless of course you're just listening to the current education minister. I do believe that on all sides of the House, we do believe that, feeding kids is the right thing to do for those students and children that can't or for whatever reason are having those challenges at home many times. I know that the education minister can't speak from experience on this, but I know that she has shared that she's been involved in education for quite some time, because I do believe that her parents were educators as well, but I'm sure they told stories of having their drawers, their desks in the classrooms full of granola bars or some sort of snacks to help students get by. And I believe that many people who are educators, are teachers, had gone through the same thing and had that availability to students. So I wish that the education minister would be able to actually be accountable and transparent and put the facts on the record in regards to some of that and not put misinformation out there. But I would like to read from a public document, Honorable Chairperson, just so that we're quoting properly here. The title is the Budget 2025-2026. It is the Torch, and it is put out by River East Transcona School Division. And so a couple things that I'm going to quote from this document, and it's right on the front page. It says how the funding increase from the province was $4 million less than last year's increase. Last year, the board passed a status quo budget that maintained the level of programs, programming, and services for students and staff that was based on the estimated increase in student enrollment for the 24-25 school year. This year's budget goes beyond the status quo as the board refuses to make cuts that would be felt directly in the classroom, end quote, due to the underfunding by this current minister, her finance minister, and the Canoe government. And what continues on.
Point of order.
Minister of Education.
It's unclear whether the member is still quoting or whether he's moved on from his quote and is adding his own colorful commentary. So I would like some clarity on what was the quote and what was his own commentary on the quote.
Can the member for Lactabani please clarify whether he was still reading from the quote or there was some additional comments made? Member for Lactabani.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. So in regards to what I was stating, and now my clock is running, Honorable Chairperson, and it was actually the minister who interrupted. But it's unfortunate that the minister wasn't paying close enough attention, but I did start the quote. I referenced the article that I was referencing. I started the quote, I ended the quote, I gave my own little addition in there, and now I'm re-quoting again. In absence of the provincial government properly funding public education, introducing an equitable funding model, we must unfortunately turn to our community to address the needs of our growing division, end quote. Who said this? The trustee, Brianne Gertzen, Chair of the Finance and Facilities for River East Transcona. So my question is, how can the minister sit there and say that she's funding education properly when obviously there's a shortfall in education funding in River East Transcona?
With that clarification, there is no point of order. The Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Yeah, I respect the board chair, Colleen Carswell, very much, and all of the board members, including Brianne Gertzen, who you just quoted from, and they certainly have a job to do, and I respect their job and their role. I would suggest to Manitobans and to the River East Transcona School Division that a 10% increase over 2 years is pretty healthy. But I understand, like I said, they have a role to do, and they're always going to ask for more. I wonder if the member opposite, the member for Lactabani, during his time as Minister of Education, if he ever had a school division come to him and say, wow, we love our funding this year, it's enough, we don't need any more. I would hesitate to guess that that never happened. Again, school divisions have a job to do, they have a duty to their community, and I would fully expect Mrs. Gertzen, Mrs. Carswell, all the members of that board and every school division across Manitoba to always be looking to advocate for their students and to their communities. So I thank them for that advocacy. I would like to read some quotes into the record. So again, just to be clear, very proud of the funding increase we provided this year. Is there more work to do? Absolutely. As I've said time and time again, catching up, that's what we're doing. We have a lot of ground to recover. This is the result of the chronic underfunding of an education system, of no plan for the education system. School divisions are set back and they have a lot of catch up to do. So we are here to partner with them in that work. Our funding has been predictable and stable. We have provided increases to every school division. In fact, let's do some quotes. Sandy Nemeth, at the time, was the president of the Manitoba School Boards Association. And quote, not seeing any board get a decrease, that's huge, end of quote, from the Winnipeg Free Press on February 10th, 2025. So that's what the Manitoba School Boards Association president had to say about our funding announcement this year, 2025. Let's talk about the record of the previous government. Let's talk about River East Transcona School Division. So in 2023, the River East Transcona School Division was in a unique position. And what they said to CTV News on March 10th of 2023 was that they had to, quote, borrow money for the first time in 2 decades, unquote. Their reserve funds were tapped out. They had to defer maintenance projects. They had to take out a loan, again, for the first time in 2 decades, to cover transportation costs, to cover costs of student record system. We saw cuts to multiple school divisions under the leadership of the member from Lac du Bonny. $11 million cut from Seven Oaks, $8.5 million from St. James Assiniboia, $10 million from Louis Riel, $2 million from Borderland. Cut after cut after cut after cut. Let's hear another quote from River East Transcona School Division. From again, CTV News, March 10th, 2023. Quote, provincial funding over the last number of years has been substantially shorter than what we needed in comparison to inflation, as well as the number of new students we are receiving. Unquote, and that is a quote from Trustee Rod Giesbrecht. So this is the fact of the matter. The education system was chronically underfunded for 7.5 years. We have a lot of catch up to do. We are here to work with River East Transcona School Division. We know that they're always going to be asking for more, and we are always going to be working to deliver more. Year after year after year, we will be here as your partner in education to meet the needs of our students and to make sure that we're making progress here in Manitoba when it comes to the education of our students. I think our budget this year is evidence of that. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. My apologies for not reading from a public document previously, but we do have the quote and where I was reading from in my previous answer to table for the committee. Thank you.
The member for Lac du Bonny.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and just to reference again, okay, well, the document doesn't have a date or time. It does have, don't know if the minister just typed that up or whatever, but it is what it is. Date, there's no date on there, no email, whatever, but there's some quotes on there, so she could have got someone either in the department or political staff, one of the 3 political staff to type that up, but nonetheless, it is what it is. It's fine. I'll accept that. So the quote that I read from Trustee Brianne Gertzen, who, obviously was stating her displeasure in the lack of funding this year by the current education minister, actually ran, as a New Democrat candidate back a few years ago for Winnipeg South. And so when you have somebody coming out that strongly in a public newsletter to community, sort of speaks volumes. And I don't want to get too far off track, so I'm just going to say this quickly. Much like what we've been seeing from the nurses union for the healthcare situations, and the only reason I reference that is because the education minister referenced health as far as one of their top priorities, and I'm not even going to go down the road right now about how the NDP government feels that they've put education not even in their top 5 priority list. So just to talk about the funding that the education minister put on the record for River East Transcona as one example, and then she referenced Seven Oaks, which I know that there's a very close tie to the Seven Oaks School Division within the department now. So River East Transcona School Division in the 23-24 school year received almost $11 million of provincial funding, and the Seven Oaks School Division received, I believe, somewhere in the tune of 3.3 to 3.8 million dollars in funding from the provincial government in the 23-24. So that's far from a perceived cut. That's an increase, and I don't know what type of math the education minister has done in her past. I'm not sure under her previous occupation prior to politics or her previous. You know, it is what it is. She can put on the record her results and her math expertise and qualifications on the record. So what I'd like to ask the minister in the short amount of time that we have left is that under our government, we had worked quite closely with other jurisdictions, not only in Canada but around the world, on recruitment, retaining and recruiting teachers. And so in 2023, we put forward the implementation of Manitoba's recruitment and retention strategy for French language teachers, Moving in Action 2023. The strategy was created to address the shortage of French-speaking teachers for the Francais and French immersion programs in Manitoba. I'd like to know how that's going, if the Education Minister can update the House.
The Honourable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Je suis très fière d'être l'un des nombreux Manitobains qui ont bénéficié de l'éducation en français dans notre province. I am so lucky to be one of the many Manitobans who have benefited from French language education in our province. And it's something that I think we should be so proud of as Manitobans, that not only do we live in a truly bilingual province, but that our government sees the value in investing in French language services and French language education. So I will give the minister credit for recognizing that and coming up and recognizing the need for the provincial government to have a strategy on recruiting and retaining French language teachers here in the province, because the interest in learning French, either as a language of primary instruction, as your first language, or as an additional language through an immersion program, that demand is growing. And unfortunately, we don't see the labor market keeping up. So absolutely, we need to work on our recruitment and retention strategy for French language. So we're happy to take up that mantle and carry it forward. Again, I think that we would be further along as a province had the previous government not eliminated as a proper division the Bureau d'éducation française. Thankfully, our government, one of the first things we did when coming into government was to reappoint an assistant deputy minister for Le Bureau. And that's no disrespect to Janet Tomey, as the member opposite mentioned yesterday, that Janet was, in the absence of having a specific assistant deputy minister on that file, thank goodness we had Janet, and she did great work. However, French language education is of such importance in our province that our government believes and knows that it deserves its own assistant deputy minister to be able to accomplish this work that needs to get done. So we are very committed to strengthening public education in French. We are partners with the DSFM, and we know that they do great work in promoting French language public education in our province. Obviously, those partnerships are going to be essential. We're happy to partner with them. We have great partnerships with l'Université de Saint-Boniface to increase the number of students admitted to the Faculty of Education. I was lucky enough to had the privilege of meeting with the leadership from l'Université just in the last week or two to discuss some of the successes and any challenges that they are experiencing in filling those expanded seats. Very proud of the work being accomplished by our ADM, René Dequier. He's making fantastic progress. Again, that was a mandate commitment to appoint that ADM role, and it was something that my predecessor, Nello Altamare, did with great swiftness. So there are a number of initiatives that we're working on. So within the Framework for Learning, there are dedicated spaces for French Immersion Program and the Francais program, which reflect each program's unique context. The curriculum renewal will now be better aligned with the goals and expected outcomes of these programs. The French Immersion Policy establishes a common provincial framework for effective implementation of French immersion programming in Manitoba. The policy is supported through professional learning for leaders and teachers, as well as the creation of support materials. The access to a growing collection of French language educational resources is happening to support teachers in all 3 programs throughout the province. And we're also working on teacher supply issues for not only French language teachers, but also Indigenous teachers and teachers in the North. So again, a lot of catching up to do, much accomplished, much to do, much to lose if we go back to the PC model of funding and valuing education. And their record speaks for itself. Thank you.
Member for Lac Du Bonnet.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. And so you've heard it here again, Manitobans.
So far, I've heard really not much in regards to what this education minister has done. We have heard that, of course, that previous education minister, the late Nello Ultimati, felt that French immersion and Francais teacher training was important. That's great. Carried on the work of the previous progressive conservative government. I mean, we saw the fact that, as the minister stated, a little bit incorrectly, but as everybody saw, that I didn't, necessarily get too uppity off the record, of course, over, misrepresenting my position or title or anything else. But I do appreciate the education minister acknowledging the good work that we had put forward in the strategy in 2023. In addition to that, we know that the progressive conservative government had created 20 new seats at the Université de Saint-Boniface teacher education program for the 23-24 school year. And in addition to that, 30 seats for the French language educational assistant training program. I have not quite heard of any kind of plan other than our plan that the education minister has moving forward. Again, I'd like to congratulate Monsieur Dequier on his position and his appointment, and I almost in person I can again apologize for the mispronouns from yesterday, but in person, hopefully he'll accept my apology, but congratulate him on his appointment. And so hopefully, again, under the great work of Janet Tomey, who was working as the Assistant Deputy Minister in charge of French language training and recruitment, and with the great staff that Janet had working with her. I know that we moved quite well, created new seats in the various different locations across this great province of ours. Matter of fact, it was under the only thing that I can say that this education minister has done on her own since becoming the education minister is basically put a huge delay on the construction of the DSFM school in Brandon, and that's unfortunate, but it is nice to know that at least those 20 new seats at USB and the 30 educational assistant training spots, at least she hasn't cut those. And so in a couple of years, the education minister will be able to pat herself on the back and go and take a stool and pick the low-hanging fruit that we have planted for her in regards to new either a Francophone or French immersion educational assistants and teachers. And so I guess I'll ask the minister in the last just over a year and a half that the NDP government has been in government, how many new Francophone or French immersion teachers do we have in the province?
The Honourable Minister for Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Yeah, I thank the member for the question. Again, Manitobans are smart. Manitobans pay attention. Manitobans know I've never patted myself on the back at all. I'm here to serve Manitobans. It's my humble privilege to do so. I'm happy to work with a fantastic team under the leadership of a visionary premier. And I'm very privileged to come to work every single day and work on behalf of Manitobans. There's a lot of work to do. As I've said several times today, there is much to do. We've accomplished a lot, and we certainly have a lot to lose if we go back to a PC government. So I've never patted myself on the back. I've also never broken the Conflict of Interest Act in Manitoba. The member in his question mentioned the pausing of a school for the day SFM. Thank goodness we paused. Coming into government, we had a lot of questions. Some of those questions were answered today in the chamber. A historic day here in Manitoba. A dark day for Manitoban democracy. We have a lot of questions to ask. So we had to pause all of those schools, and we had to look into each one of those schools and make sure that the contracts awarded under the previous government were done so in a way that gives value for Manitobans. So Manitobans learned a lot today. Manitobans have a lot of questions about how the member opposite awarded childcare centers. There's a lot of questions to be asked. Manitobans have a lot of questions. We got some of those answers today. We'll keep working on behalf of Manitobans. We'll keep being transparent. We'll keep uncovering the mess that the PCs left us with. And we'll continue to fund education. We'll continue to listen. We'll continue to work with our education partners, superintendents, school boards, educators, and we're going to do that every day to make sure that we are serving and meeting the needs of children in Manitoba. That is who I work for. That is who I answer to. And I am so proud and humble to do so. We have an important task as government. It is a sacred privilege that we've been given. And again, we're going to make progress every single day, every single year. How many French language teachers are there in the province of Manitoba today? There's more. There are more teachers working in our system today, certainly than there was in 2023. 630, at least 630 more educators working in the province of Manitoba today, thanks to the investments made by the NDP government in partnership with school divisions. It's great news. Again, I'm not going to stand here and lie to Manitobans. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of ground to recover. There is so much catching up to do after 7.5 years of chronically underfunding the education system. We're going to make progress on French language instruction here in Manitoba. We're going to make progress on Indigenous language immersion, something that's never been done in Manitoba before.
The hour being 5 o'clock, the committee will rise.